I know. We're here. It's another Thursday. We got some going on. We got the music playing. We're here for another Think and Link. We've got two amazing guests, Houston White and Chris Manley. We're going to talk fashion design. We're going to talk community design. We're going to talk culture. It's going to be a really good one. My co-host, Kitty Hart from Heroic Productions, is here as well. This is going to be a good one. It's going to be a really good one. We were just doing a little reminiscing because Kitty was there when this little thing, Think and Link, was given birth, was put out in the world. And we started in our kitchen. I think our first group was 10 people in the kitchen at the North Loop location. Hanging out, chatting about life. It was kind of a, some of you might know.
2009, is that right?
That sounds about right.
Yep.
That sounds about right.
We moved from the Lumber Exchange building over to the North Loop. We were, I like to say that we brought the pool to the North Loop because we moved in and then the North Loop sort of exploded. But yes, we sat at that kitchen island and we brainstormed about what this could be, what could Think and Link be. And so Aaron and the whole team at Capsule, congratulations for what this has grown to. It's impressive.
Yes. We currently have 355 people have signed up for this to hang out with us and chat with these two gentlemen. And all the credit goes to the two of them and the draw that they are and what they're doing. And it's really, really fascinating. So a little bit though to our primary sponsor in Capsule, and that we are a special projects firm here in Minneapolis. And as relevant as we are in the fashion world, we've actually worked with Patagonia, Arc'teryx, Sitka, and a variety of other fashion brands, predominantly outdoor. And so whenever a fashion rising icon shows up on our radar, we're like, we got to have him on the stage or her on the stage. It's going to be cool. Anyway, so special project firm here in Minneapolis, capsule.us. You want to look us up. But I'm going to hand it over to Kitty, and she's going to introduce our two guests and have them talk about themselves. Cool.
Great. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kitty Hart. I'm with Heroic Productions. Just a really quick intro for Heroic. This is the best way that I have figured out how to describe who we are and what we do. There are corporations and organizations all over the country, all over the world, that need to energize, inspire, educate, fundraise, celebrate their employees or their teams. Those activities are best accomplished through event marketing. And so Heroic is known for designing and producing that type of event. So we're based right here in Minneapolis, but we work all over the world. And it's just an amazing industry to work in. So Aaron, thank you. Always happy to be your sidekick, and always fun to be involved in these conversations. I will kick us off this morning. And I'll just say it's been so fun to do my own research on Houston and Chris, and to have the opportunity to meet you guys. So I think it's best to start with you each giving a little history of a little bit of your background separately, and then how you came together. Let's start there. Chris, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so hey everybody, I'm Chris Manley. I work for a company called Decor. I'm a GM and SVP of merchandising and product development. My background is all product development. I've worked for various companies in fashion, from Hugo Boss to the president of Theory to Nike. And then most recently with Decor, we started the company 11 years ago. Again, my background is all product development and merchandising. I'm a big fan of fashion, and I'm a student of shopping and getting to learn more about the business. And I was lucky enough to meet this young man to my side here, Houston White, who's a change maker, entrepreneur, designer, all around good guy. And we were brought together by a mutual company that we're working with. And I was able to kind of like support and help bring his vision to life, which I've been super excited about. So that's my story. And again, we're an open book with both of us. Any questions as this goes through, please reach out and ask. And then I'll turn it over to Houston.
Yeah, super honored to be here, hanging out with you guys this morning. Houston White, I am a serial social entrepreneur, multi-hyphen, and I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and the reality is I've never had a W-2 job in my life. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. I first told my mom when I was 7, I don't want to have a regular job. And I never have, and that is good. And good some days, bad other days. But it's my story. Inherently I'm a creative. I was born in Mississippi to a village of people that were very entrepreneurial in nature, and so I grew up seeing creativity in all its forms. My grandmother was a milliner. My grandfather was in the sugarcane business. And my dad and his brother owned a drywall company. So I used to bounce around from creative engine to creative engine, learning. And I was just, transfixed with this idea of self-sufficiency, being creative. And as I grew up, I've always been in the art, always been in the fashion. I grew up in that, Bobby Brown, Gumby, New Edition, airbrush on overall era. And that was really my entree into fashion. I made my first shirts when I was about 10 years old. We had a group, I think it was Sugar and Spice or something terrible like that. But I made the shirts for the crew, and we used to wear suits to school every day. And that was kind of the thing. It was like, this kid's coming to school every day with a necktie on. What in the world is going on? And so every subsequent stage in school, it was always about being fresh, being fly. And in urban America, that's currency. I started cutting hair when I was about 12 and doing really well cutting hair because, again, your style, currency. And so I've always just kind of stayed true to who I am, in that I'm an urban kid with some rural sensibilities. And I've been able to build a brand that just kind of speaks to that. To Chris's point, we were connected to a mutual partner. And Chris and I hit it off because we had a conversation about, one, we both love golf. That was our big icebreaker, talking about our struggles on the course. But then this idea around American style and having a heritage, like Black leaning take on Ivy style, if you will. And Chris has been paramount in helping me think through how to bring this perspective to life. And so it's been quite an honor to be on this ride.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Awesome.
That is so cool. Yeah, and so we had a conversation, whatever it was, a week or two ago, and talked about Houston, about using design and honestly actually using business as a tool for designing a better community. In that part of Minneapolis that you described it as the what did you have? It was like not the pompous, but you had a word for it. It was the high end part of North Minneapolis.
The Harlem, yeah. Or Hyde Park, yeah.
The Hyde Park, yeah. Right, that's really cool. Did you get into a little bit of the background of what your vision is for community and what you're doing in that neighborhood? For everybody else's, for this national audience, for what you're doing in Minneapolis.
Absolutely. I mean, Minneapolis, a place that I love, has a lot of challenges. Obviously, most recently, we know about the murder of George Floyd and the racial reckoning and what's happened here. But long before then, the struggles of Black professionals and just Black people in general kind of finding their own space and a place that is safe, thriving, has the ability to build really strong Black businesses. We know the power of entrepreneurship on any community. And there's just hasn't been a place like that for Black folks. And so in 2014, my late wife and I had a conversation about leaving Minnesota, just because it's so hard to exist here as a Black professional. it's exhausting. Always having to kind of either assimilate or have conversations about, what's missing, as opposed to just going somewhere where it already exists. And so we talked about going to DC, Chicago, or New York. We're going to come see you, Chris. And because I have a background in building things, and my wife was working at the bank at the time, and she understood finance. We decided to let's try to use what we have, right? Like there's a quote within my brand ethos right now, like start with right where you are. How can you make change where you are? And so we started to use the barbershop as a means to gather folks. And what we discovered is there were a whole lot of young people, both older folks and all in between, who wanted a similar kind of space to just be in. And so we decided to name it, branding matters, Camdentown. Because Camdentown is a place that exists in Northeast London that is really vibey, cool. And we thought it would really speak to what we're trying to accomplish, street markets and, a place where Prince would, if he was still alive, want to sneak in and see artists playing the coolest.
Oh, snap. I think he froze.
We lost
Houston, I think you're frozen.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Well, hopefully he'll come back in a moment.
hopefully he'll come back, yeah.
We can move to you, Chris, and there's an interesting connection here that I just realized since our last conversation, but Camden Town is depicted in Peaky Blinders, which is very much an Irish film, and as I understand it, you've got a bit of Irish in you. And
Yeah, just a wee bit. Yeah, so, I didn't tell you in the beginning of this. So I grew up in the Bronx, New York. I went to an all-boys Catholic school, and I was that weird kid who was into fashion. And then I went to FIT, and that's where I kind of got my chops in the fashion world and learned how to be a merchant. And it was, back then growing up in a community, again, I'm the youngest of 7. So, I had to be an entrepreneur within my family just to make sure I got the last piece of chicken, So it was like, how do you figure out, we grew up with lower to middle class to, sometimes feeling pretty poor, but you work really hard and you kind of strive through, right? And going into the fashion business as a guy like me, there's not a lot of guys like me in the fashion business. And then when I met Houston, it's kind of like there's definitely not a lot of guys like him. And I go back to my old high school where I grew up in the Bronx, and I do a career day thing about this, how to get kids involved in fashion, because we need diversity in our industry. And we want diversity in our industry, but there is sometimes a lot of people that are afraid to go into fashion because it's, considered a feminine industry, or it's not right for me, or whatever it might be. And I try to get that across to the kids. How do you kind of come into a place and make a mark on your own? And they love style and they love fashion, but they don't know how to start. So, yeah. But the Irish kind of neighborhood, like you brought up, and that's where I came from. So yeah,
that's cool. That's very cool. Katie, you have a question?
Yep. So there's a lot of amazing work that's being done in strengthening and or revitalizing small communities. Love to ask this question to both of you. So when Houston comes back as well, who do each of you look to, or who do you admire for what they're doing in this strengthening work or revitalizing small communities?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with the people that are in the community, right? And I applaud Houston for the work he's doing in Camden Town, where he's, has taken an empty lot and kind of built a coffee shop. He's building some apartments. He's not taking his money and moving out to, the rich suburbs or something. He's walking the walk, right? And it's like, you can't fix everything, but start with the person that's right next to you. Let me put a helping hand out to that person and be part of the community and make the community better and stronger. And I think he's done a really good job about that. So, most recently, I think of him when it comes to that, because even when we first met almost 2 years ago, going into his construction site, and then seeing what it is today, and seeing the diverse community that he's built within even the coffee shop and the barber shop and everything else there. It's just amazing to see. So
Yeah.
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 And welcome back. And
Hey,
he's back.
Welcome back.
Aaron's lost you.
So
You look great.
And speaking of construction site, those guys just hit a
Oh.
breaker out there while they're building the apartment building, and so the whole cafe just went.
Oh.
So I'm like, when we're live, are you kidding me? This happens right now. Well, now you know we're really building something for real. It's just really happening.
Absolutely. Yes.
That is great.
We're just talking about who inspires you. Chris just shared a little bit, but again, in all of this, there's been such a great movement over the last, I'll just say decade, but certainly it's probably more than that, in revitalizing small communities. Houston, who do you admire in this space? Who have you looked at and said, wow, they're doing a great job, and that's what I'm trying to do as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think about what TI is doing down in Atlanta. I'm really inspired. I'm a golfer, and I think a lot about like East Lake and what happened with that golf course. Basically, how those folks decided, look, we're driving into this community, going into this gated golf course, which is super private and ultra like exclusive, but we're driving past all of this poverty and pain. And in a community that basically had 75% dropout rate, they now have 100%. 100% of the kids that graduate from the East Lake High School are going on a higher education and or some other trade school career. But it's a great example of how folks stayed in their lane, use what they do naturally and what they love, and realize that they can impact the whole community. And so I think a lot about that example, and yet what TI is doing in terms of like thinking about building housing in like Buckhead to stave off some of the natural gentrification, like how to build housing that folks can afford, but there's also luxury, so it fits within this upperly mobile mixed neighborhood. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, people that don't just go blind to what's going on around them, they actually open their eyes and see it for the opportunity, that is, and to make an economic contribution.
Well, yeah, I mean, what if I on a slide, we talk about this often, it's on one of my main slides, and I said, well, what if Prince would have bought a block in North Minneapolis and built Paisley Park? You know what I mean? Like that for me is there was Black people especially have to do the work of saying, no, we're not going to take our money and extract it from the communities that made us. We have to be intentional. And your presence is more important than your pocketbook. Donations are nice, but they typically are filtered through a machine, and that machine is built to operationalize brokenness. And so that for me is like the rubber that meets the road. Is like we talking the talk is invest your money in an environment that made you. And some of these disparities that exist between white and Black, I think, would begin to disappear over time.
Yeah, that is so freaking elegant. Damn, dude. We have. I want to acknowledge. Dude. Well, I know it totally makes sense because you've got to work under economics, and it's investor money, not donated money. It's honestly more valuable. Investor money has an attachment of expected returns. It doesn't have that when it comes to, and I know people are working on that when it comes to donated money, that there's more of an expectation of return. But it's always got that connotation of like, no, it doesn't have to have a return. We're just donating it. Well, no, you should have outcomes. You should have results attached to it. God, it's just freaking amazing. I do want to acknowledge that we have Alvin from Kenya who popped in. He doesn't know how he ended up here, but he is loving the vibe. Which I totally
Alvin, what
appreciate
up?
that.
What's up, man? That is so cool.
Tuned in from Kenya. I
love that. I love that he doesn't know how he ended up here. That's awesome.
I know. I would bet it was Nick Teets. Nick Teets is like all over the place. The man's got a global reach. He's also all over our wonderful commentary. As our mutual friend shows up in the same place at the same time. But okay, back to Chris and Chris's golf game. Let's talk about that.
Or lack thereof.
How do you two compare in golf? Because when Houston was gone, I was going to set up this whole thing that Chris was trashing Houston's golf game when he was gone and he couldn't defend himself. But I wasn't sure, like, how you compare in golf.
Well, let's just put it this way. He's definitely better than me. He's probably 5-6 strokes better than me. But it's been a minute since we played against each other. And golf is it's a humbling game, right? And the one thing about golf, which I will say, you really can understand the value of an individual when you play with them. The way how they interact on a course, what their manners are like. Do they because the game is all about respect, whether it's playing with somebody, knowing the rules, the attire, everything about it. Some people would call it stodgy, but it's really it teaches a lot about respect and doing the right thing, right? And if somebody acts like a complete jerk on the course, they're probably a complete jerk in life, right? Because you shouldn't get worked. At the end of the day, it's a wonderful game, and it teaches patience. And by the way, nobody's good at the game. Nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how bad everybody is at the game.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, if a struggle is a defining element, and how do you handle a struggle or a challenge? It's 18 holes of that, right? It's 4 hours of that you're going to struggle, and so what kind of character comes out is very reflective. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I got three rules for the golf course, and they're very simple. The first one, and in my opinion, probably the most important: look good. Secondly, play fast, right? Like, because if you play fast, you can play with anybody. Doesn't matter. Like, don't get overly serious and hit 1,000 shots in the same spot. And the last is just have fun. When I first started playing golf, I was way too into like technique, and the game wasn't fun because you're gonna have bad days, right? And you got to just lean into that and just go with it that day. And the other part of it, for young professionals, I always tell folks, like, look, you're not going to get 4.5 hours with a leader or somebody who could change your life uninterrupted any other way, I don't think. And so golf is just a big tool, right? Like, and to frame it in a different way. And the golf brand that, I built, we're building Victory. Those are really the principles, right? Like, what is the next wave of golfer? And using this game more for a true hobby than a status symbol.
It's a character builder.
You can even look at like the amazing work that Top Golf has done, where they've turned golf into kind of a fun, entertaining place to do things with family and friends and date night even, right? Where and if you just want to check it out, is for you to go there, and it's like awesome. Because listen, it's a commitment. If it's 4 hours, if you're lucky. It's usually 4.5, 5. The places we play, because we don't belong to clubs, it's it is what it is. But it's just it's a life sport for sure.
Yeah.
All that.
Beautiful.
Give you a question?
Yes, and I also really like Nick's question that he dropped into chat, so I would love to pose that one as well. So let's do that, Aaron, because I think that. So Nick has asked, how might we get more investors to invest in early stage entrepreneurs? There's such a community here in the Twin Cities, and Nick, you are one of them, that is helping entrepreneurs get businesses off the ground, create some traction and movement. That's a wonderful question. It's a tough one. How might we get more investors to invest in early stage entrepreneurs?
I mean, that's a great question. I am one that I like to make sure that the businesses or the products that I'm developing aren't just a hobby before I take on institutional money. And I think that it's really important to go through that gauntlet. Like, I mean, growing up in urban America, we have these natural filters, and they're called your friends. And if you're a barber and no one comes to get their hair cut, well, you probably should either find a new teacher or stop cutting hair and find something else to do. So I think part of it is making sure that entrepreneurs are willing to go through the filter, right? And make sure that what you have, there's a market for it. And secondly, I think be your own bank first. I'm a big proponent of self-funding in the first stages, for two reasons. One is I don't want to sell my soul, and you can all money ain't good money necessarily, right? Like, and so if we focus so much on how do you get investment, you could be tied to a partner that has a different goal for your product or business than you do. But now you're in a different equity position and you don't have as much control, especially early. So I think it just depends, right? Like, what is your appetite for risk? What is the exit strategy or long-term strategy of a business? And I think that's on the incumbent upon the entrepreneur to ask that question first. And then, like anything, if you got the right pitch, if you feel confident, I think money is relatively easy to get, if you just know how to like present your product in the right way. And there's a lot of money on the sideline that's looking for a home. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to add on to that too, it's like, you have to proof your whatever it is your new idea is, right? So, I mean, just something as simple as like Shark Tank, you see who they invest in, right? It's somebody who has proved that this is a good idea. And maybe it's more of like, are there people in business that can mentor the young person that is trying to be the entrepreneur to try something new, to see if what their idea can be proved out and can be something that is worthwhile for the investor to invest in. Because I do think, as Houston said, there's money out there if it's a good, if it's a good idea. If somebody invented the three-legged pants, right? I don't think someone's going to invest, right? Because I don't know any. It's just one of those things. So, just saying, I don't know. So all those entrepreneurs out there that have a three-legged pant idea,
just let it go.
Just let it go. Get out of that.
Agreed.
Okay, I've jotted down a couple of these little quotes that you guys have shared with us. And Chris, you said that you are a student of shopping. I love that. I am also a student of shopping. Just ask my husband. I'm always learning.
Notice the difference. Student of shopping, not a student of buying.
Yes.
Big difference.
And so, exactly.
Your husband you're probably a student of buying, if I can read your husband's lips.
Exactly. That's exactly. So, and on this topic, I am so fascinated by the rise of social commerce. And so can we talk about that a little bit? I'd love to get your guys' input, because that's certainly a part of the way that you're building this business. Wow, how this has exploded, how it is launching brands, how it is launching influencers. What are your thoughts on this, and where is it going?
Well, I'll go first. I can tell you that, so 5-6 years ago, before the pandemic, you could put stuff online and open up a Shopify store and start to sell some stuff. And it was easy, relatively easy, right?
Yeah.
The world has changed. I mean, it changes every day. But I think right now you need a three-prong approach. You do need brick and mortar, you do need wholesale, and you do need your own e-commerce site. E-commerce has become very expensive. In fact, it's less expensive to run a retail store than it is to run an e-commerce shop at this point. And I think the consumer wants an experience, and who better to give them an experience than in your own store, right? And I think wholesale, meaning you'd have a third-party distributor. Like if you have a product you could sell to, for Martin Patrick as an example, is the name popped in my head, and then your own store, and then e-com. I think those three things you need. Listen, there are things like lightning in a bottle where some influencer can just create something and he's got 8 million followers and they all buy something and it can be off to the races. Like the Kardashians, they just attach their name to something, people buy into them, and they're off to the races. It's a lot more work than it used to be, and it's definitely it's a lot of work. I mean, but I think you need those three things: e-com, brick and mortar, and wholesale accounts.
Yeah, that's definitely the new order of things. That's the fact that you can't just do e-com. The cost of acquisition of any new customer is almost at the price of the lifetime value of that customer. And so it's just insane that those prices have gone. Yeah. Houston, you look like you've got an opinion on that you just
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the reality is the space of building a brand is very crowded. The way Manley describes it, it's like we're not going to do like hoodie hookups. I think what is appeal or the special sauce off of like creating I'm just speaking about clothing right now. I think it's become very easy to put a mark on any number of things and then say, well, I got a business of that sort. And I think for me, at least, even when it comes down to like coffee, I mean, we're talking about a commodity. Whether you have coffee from one brand or another, depending on where they're sourced, they could be the exact same thing. And it's the emotional connection that a consumer has with a particular brand. And that's why I always say people buy the why, not the what. And the power, to me, in the social space is more so about storytelling. It's more so about organic user-generated content. Like, how are people responding to a hang tag, a brand message, a fabric, a colorway? And if you can, I mean, we saw that with the flight suit that we developed for this collection. Now, that was kind of an out there item at the time, especially if you think way back to when it was an idea. This was a year and a half ago. But here it is, right? And the way folks actually merchandised that, and the way folks showed up in that item, and the way they wanted to like show how it looked, that then it gets others excited about like, oh my gosh, like I want to be in one of those photos, right? And that creates the FOMO effect that drives business. And so I think that is what I'm excited about and trying to really focus the attention on, is like how do you create an emotional contact with emotional connection with product that people want to share, because that is more powerful than any marketing campaign that we can just drum up on our own.
Yeah, that's central to everything that we talk about in marketing, isn't it? It's that when you can create something, an experience or something that touches someone and moves them to some sort of action.
For sure.
Sharing, buying, whatever it might be, but it actually touches them and moves them.
Yeah. And especially in this moment where, I mean, I feel like this is the great reset across a lot of the worldwide like living experience, from work to where you shop, how you dress. And that's a lot of the conversations that we have about how do we create the uniform of the future. And modularity to me is one of the new abilities to be sustainable. Because if you create modular collections, everything ladders back to everything. And so people can buy less, but they're going to use it more. And so it has this natural effect of creating sustainability through just being very intentional. And those are the opportunities, I think, to really like lean into in this moment. And then you become a brand that speaks powerfully to a moment in time, and then that lives into the future as the new standard, if you will.
Yeah. There's something that has to be mentioned, but it's the anti to fast fashion. What you're talking about there, fast fashion, is literally the Antichrist. It's just not. It's a horrific example of not a sustainable business model and a sustainable approach to fashion. What you're talking about is just so elegant. I mean, it's Patagonia level elegant. I love that. We have a number of guests jumping in with questions and thoughts, and we have not mentioned your partner yet. Your retail partner, Target, has not come up yet in this conversation. I don't think we dropped it in, but someone dropped it into the chat, which is inevitable. It's going to happen, and they've obviously been an amazing partner for you. I'm curious how you both had pushed them. Have you advanced them and their thinking over at Target? Have you helped them see a different view of the world, perhaps? I love it when the smaller brands or the up and coming have an influence over the big behemoths like a Target, and help them change their thinking a bit. Any perspective on that, either of you?
Here's what I'll say. One, the bullseye is amazing, right? Like I am forever grateful and always a fan. But behind that bullseye is a whole bunch of human beings. And so for me, my relationship to Target has been about those people and taking time to really get to know me. Also, even like Chris and I, right? Like the idea that we spent time on the golf course before we started making clothes. And so we've had a whole lot of dinners. When I say we, just all the different teams throughout Target, but we've really tried to build a relationship. And so that has created trust. And so the teachable part is we're contemporaries. What Target does well, they do. What I do well, I do. And then we combine that. And the magic of having a partner like Chris and Decor with all the wisdom, understanding, the ability to execute against these ideas, that is what Target has really done, is created a very unique and new way to go about building a brand that could really show up in a different way. And so I think there's a lot of bravery, a lot of courage on their part, and willingness to just grow and learn together. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're on a journey.
Yeah, and I mean, they've been a tremendous partner, and they've allowed us to create a vision that is not the hoodie hookup, right? It's not just, I mean, we're creating a fashion line that is really, top notch. It's a must-have item. It's not some logo driven. We have very few logos on the product that we make. And in fact, the more fashion it is, the better it sells, right? So, and they've let us kind of push that. They have not gotten in the way. They've given us the platform to have the message. And they're celebrating a native son of Minneapolis, where they're based, and kind of have given us the platform to kind of share his story and continue to build the message. So nothing but, admiration and love for the partnership with them, across the board.
I would just add, like, we have the word, our differences make us dope on an end cap in Target, right? Like, enough said, drop the mic. I mean, it's just like,
That showing up in Target is so, yeah.
Yeah. Target is a special brand. We all here have a lot of affection for them, obviously. But what do you think about other big box brands? Are there others that you think would be taking the same approach? A question here that's been posed is, can you provide some advice on what big box is looking for from a private label supplier or manufacturer? Just talked about what Target's doing, and would there be others, or how would others look at it differently?
Yeah, I mean, every big box that I've worked with in the past and work with currently, they all have different approaches. And, Target's been a partner. And I think for us, it's really been terrific. And, as the owner of Decor, this guy Zoo, he always says, I've been dating Target for 10 years. I really would like to marry them. Because that's, it's like, it's like we have been courting Carship. It's been 15 years I've been working with Target, and they've been tremendous. And they kind of, when they met Houston, they said, Houston, you need to work with these guys. These are the guys that are going to bring your vision to life. And they brought Houston to us, and we were like, thank you. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity to do a brand like this. And then we went out and hired great people to kind of, from the community, to match that kind of effort. So, and when I look at, listen, we sell everybody from Saks Fifth Avenue to, you name it. And I can't comment on people I don't work with, because I don't know how they act. But it's, if you have a good idea and you have a good story, you kind of have to just keep grinding to figure out how to get to them, right? And if it's more from a private label standpoint, if somebody's trying to figure out how to do private label for a big box, that's my expertise. That's my lifestyle. That's my. I'm not going to tell you how to make the gravy. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you got to keep grinding and figure it out. But I mean, of all the people I've worked with at Target, it's just been from big boxes, just the best. So.
Yeah, and I've had other experiences with other big box retailers, and here's what I would say. I think it's very important. I mean, product is product. I mean, I don't. We're not chasing like a trend. We're trying to build something that remains relevant into the future because it connects emotionally, right? Like the folks that are working on it trust each other. And, you know, my business model, my focus is culture plus capacity. Examples of that is a Jimmy Iovine and a Dr. Dre. Jimmy Iovine said in a quote, like when you have cultural savants or people who really understand the culture, you give them the keys to the car and you let them drive. And so I think that a big part of working with big box retailers is that's what can be really difficult. You know, you have to have a lot of trust and a lot of understanding to be willing to give somebody the keys to a very nice car or you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, obviously they trust you greatly. That's for sure. It shows up in a big way, and it's really rather cool. We always ask about like people's favorite book, or typically ask for people's favorite book, movie, and everything else. But there's a particular book that I want to talk about with you two that came up in our previous conversation. The book Take Ivy. Do you mind giving us some of that background and how that book brought the two of you together and some of that history? Because that is a freaking cool story. I think everybody should know that. The book Take Ivy, right?
Yeah.
Houston, you want to start? Manley take it.
Okay, so
he started with
when we, you know, the first phone call that I had with Houston, and I started understanding what he wanted to do, right? And to me, you know, it was kind of like this. I don't want to use the word urban preppy, but it's kind of sort of like that, right? And if you think of, you know, Polo, Tommy Hilfiger, and those brands that kind of built a lot of their reputation off the African American community, quite frankly, especially in the late 80s and late 90s. And they were started out as preppy brands. So when I was at Nike, I came across this book, Take Ivy. And basically Take Ivy is a photo essay of a Japanese photographer who photographed all the Ivy League schools during the 1960s and the style that was, right? And I thought, if we could take that idea of that book and put it in Black culture, that could kind of be the division, right? So if you took Black historic colleges and said, because those colleges were dressing like, everybody dressed like that back then, right? But what's the twist to make it modern and hip? So I bought the book, I wrote a little note to Houston and sent it to him and said, look, take a look through this and let me know what you think. And then, you know, you can say.
And it was so timely and so resonant because when I first jotted down the first logos, the sketches, I've always been Afrocentric, urby, preppy kid. I mean, that's just always been my first day of ninth grade. I wore a Hilfiger shirt and a backpack strapped on both arms with my shirt tucked in and a Coach belt. And so that's just who I am inherently, but a little edgy. And what had been occurring to me just personally, there is not one brand that emanated from Black culture that really speaks to heritage. You know, Black culture is American culture. If you look at in 1963, John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Sidney Poitier all wore the same suit because the Ivy style, and so did Miles Davis, and so did, right? Like, and you can go on and on and on. And so there's this signature aesthetic in like modern American history, but hasn't had that urban like funk put on it. And the way I look at my brand or what I want to do is kind of like how jazz was created. You know, it's taken the best of the core of classical music or style and then adding that swing to it. And that's why that book, that's why what I'm trying to do is so, because it's fashion for all. It just emanates from culture. And that, you know, is the pitch that I made early on. And Chris just got it. And that book just, my best friend went to Dartmouth. I borrowed his Dartmouth tie when I was in ninth grade. And and so, you know, if you think about the mashup between Ivy and the HBCU, my aunt used to run the bookstore at Jackson State, which Deion Sanders now coaches at. And my first real sketchbook came from Jackson State in 1986. I still got that sketchbook. And so there's just a whole lot of truisms that comes out of that.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely epitomizes that, his fashion. Yeah.
I'm guessing everybody's looking up Take Ivy on Amazon right now.
Well, it's a good thing it's affordable now, because it used to be, it was out of print forever, and then it just got re-released. So it was buy an original copy. It's crazy to find.
There may be a rush on sales today.
I was going to get a boost. We do have to acknowledge that we've got James Damian making a comment here, and if any of you know, he's been a past guest on this, and he's a great friend of us, and also one that was known for wearing an ascot, the only one wearing an ascot around Best Buy when he was head of design for Best Buy. So in the world of ascots and fashion, I mean, James has it down.
Hello, James.
He also, the great one, James Damian. I know, he's got it. Yeah. You have another question, Katie?
We loved it when James would come visit us at Capsule. And it always caused us to put a little bit of extra time and consideration into what we were wearing to the office then. I'm just saying.
That's right. I mean,
I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. We have until noon, right, Aaron? We go till noon? Okay.
Yeah.
So both of you have shared names of people who have been really influential, people that you have admired, have influenced who you are today, what you're doing today. Who do you look to now today? What you're both doing is exhausting. You need to have a lot of resiliency. Who inspires you today? How do you re-energize yourself?
So who and what for me, I guess. I love to cook. It is a great experience for me. I love to be on the golf course as often as possible. That's where I recharge. But the other thing, I mean, my human connection, I have friends in a friend circle that, you know, it is true, right? As an entrepreneur, as a creative, you're putting so much out, you're replete, like you have to just refuel. And so for me, it's my friend circle, and I don't work with anybody that I wouldn't marry, so to speak. And so I'm around a lot of people that are very energizing. And so it could be dinner, like Manley and I, he came in town on Sunday night. We had dinner together. That was fun and relaxing and energizing, and we talked. So a lot of it is just a friend circle. Like the people that I work with have become like family. And so we make sure we spend some time. We do morning time happy hour every Friday at the cafe. And we got a DJ, and it's just good energy. We burn incense and we drink some interesting coffee drinks and listen to, you know, good music.
And it's funny. I have two or three probably. You know, one is, you know, as I get older, I have less patience for bullshit. And just, I really have no patience for it. And I think, you know, I started this company 11 years ago with Zoo, and I've lost very few people because we allow people to be people here. And I say this a lot, and sometimes people get insulted, but it's the truth. I've hired no one on my team because of their talent. I've hired everybody because they're good people. I could teach people how to be talented, I can't teach them how to be a good person at this point in their life. At 35 years old, they're either who they are or they're not who they are. Right? People can change, yes, but so I'm driven by just nice people, which sounds kind of corny, but it's true. And the other thing is, I am amazed by the ocean and the power of the ocean. I have a house at the beach, and the more time I get, that's my happy place, and I'm inspired by the power of what is in there, what goes on in there, and what it can do. And then of course my family. My family is everything. But those kind of three things are super important to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sure.
All good things.
Yeah, definitely a no asshole rule for sure.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, I would say something else, but it's not appropriate for the capsule production. But I want to make a shirt that says it. But
we already broke our YouTube PG-13 status, so don't worry. Swearing is okay to a certain degree. Nothing we can do about it. Is this allowable for children? Probably not. But yeah, that is. I mean, it's a work in life, and the people you want to hang out with. We're Kitty and I remember this little moment. We got chosen to do our first project for Patagonia. They said their last criteria, which is Yvon Chouinard's criteria that he puts in there for working with any outside partner, you have to ask yourself as a team, would you spend a week in a tent with these people? And we won on that criteria. And it was Kitty and I. And I like, I mean, hello. Yeah, we never spent a week in a tent with them. But it's right. It's that kind of thing. Like, you're going to do work together. You're going to spend time together. You want to like and enjoy the person you're hanging out with. And they make a contribution to the conversation and be interesting and just not be painful to be around. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
It does seem that we hear more people talk about that. And Houston, one of the things that I wrote down that you talked about too is the Great Reset. There are so many things that people have just said, nope, not going to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like there are, more things that we can kind of add to that list of things that we're just saying, not gonna do it the way that I used to do it. We spend too much time. We spend too much time in this work to not love it, enjoy it, be enriched by it, all of that. So
yeah,
another thing to add. Yeah, hopefully you guys are, Chris and Houston are able to see the chat comments that are coming in. Hello, Wim. Thanks for tuning in today.
Is that Wim?
I noticed that.
Is that my guy Wim? Wim and I were on a panel together. Man, I had a blast. We're going on tour together, Wim. He's the Andy Warhol of the metaverse. That's my guy, man. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So here's a really funny little Wim story. Wim, I hope you don't mind that I'm telling this story. He and I connected on LinkedIn. This was a number of years ago. It was when the X Games were here in town, and I was at one of the social events in one of the suites at US Bank Stadium, and I see Wim across the room, and I had only seen him on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, I think that's Wim Stocks. I walked over to him and I pulled him up on LinkedIn, and I held up my phone and I said, "Is this you?" He said, "Yes, it's me." And that was the beginning of a wonderful networking, collaborative relationship with Wim. Yeah, great guy.
Great guy. That's so funny.
When I first read that, I'm like, so Kitty and Houston are crisp and nailing it. What about myself and Chris? Like, what the hell, Wim? Yeah, I mean, we're not that. I feel like I didn't show up completely today on the fashion front. But okay.
There's also a comment from Brent that I wanted to make sure that it was specifically to Houston. Can you see that comment?
No, I cannot.
Oh, you can't see those. Okay.
No, we can't see anything.
Oh, okay. All right.
Some things go directly to one of us and not to everybody.
So Brent's comment to Houston, speaking of HBCUs, I visited the Florida A&M campus on a few occasions when I worked on education policy issues in Tallahassee many years ago. Fantastic and innovative programs in business and pharmacy, sadly under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big problem, right? I mean, it's one of the things that I hope to do. This is why entrepreneurship is key to me in social equity, because as you become more successful, and I'm frugal, so I don't, I want to create impact, and so being able to, all my earphones fall out. Um, Being able to create resources for places that are under resourced, right? Like that is a huge part of my why. Creating a massive brand with Target is not about, buying a bunch of expensive houses. It's about being able to really highlight a lot of um, talent. There are tremendous human there's so much human potential in so many communities that are overlooked. And I want to be able to create a funnel where I can unabashedly fund people and say, look, I told you so. Dr. Dre took that album to 19 record labels. The Chronic, could you imagine?
Wow.
So what I want to do is there's a whole bunch of people that are going to get fired for not taking chances on me. And so like there are a whole bunch of more me's out there. And so creating resources so we can unearth those people.
Yeah.
That is, What if you were number 18 or number 17, you turned it down and, right. Right. Well, it's opening people's eyes up on one side, right? Of the investors, the retail partners, the other, distribution partners, just having them see a broader view of the world, that there's other possibilities out there, connecting with Nick Teets, seeing what's coming in the entrepreneurial community so you can be connected to that world for sure. And then on the other side of it, the entrepreneurship thing, you think is a struggle. When we talk, I can tell the look in your eye, you've seen the struggle, you've seen what hard, it's not, it's got the glamour. People look at it and see all the glamour sometimes, and that's all they see. But if you're going to go do it, you got to face the struggle, the risk, the death.
The buzzsaw.
Yeah, the buzzsaw, like it becomes it. These are your decisions, right? It's all on you. If there's any honesty meter, it is entrepreneurship, because you cannot lie to yourself,
No doubt
right?
about it.
Like, I messed that up, right? And you just you epitomize that. You're not on the other side of anything. You're just you're charting the path. You're showing people that can be done.
And failures are part of it. We need to create room for people to be able to fail. You only learn when you fail. So if we penalize people for taking chances and scrutinize them for failing, well, then you miss the whole point. Yeah. And so we have to create more of an ability for folks to fail forward.
Yeah. In fact, that's encourage people to fail. I tell people, like, not literally, but if you don't give somebody rope to go out and see if they can figure something out, they're never going to learn. Mm-hmm. If they keep failing, that's another story. But usually with failure comes responsibility to learn why they failed, right? So that is a big part of any job, but also extremely, you talk about the struggle, but the hard work that's behind it is just, it's not, he makes it look easy, but this man works 24/7. Trust me.
Did you say, Houston, did you say fail forward?
Oh yeah, that's my thing. Fail forward.
That's awesome.
Success is just a continuum of failure without quitting. Mm-hmm. It's iterative, I love it. To Chris's point, like I try to fail forward and fast because you're figuring things out. When we're designing, there's just a whole bunch of failures with a few successes. You're sketching a whole bunch of stuff, and it's like you never see the light of day. And so, I mean, I think it's similar, you have to think that way, and it has to be encouraged, and you have to be around people who are really big on failing. I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Love that. Unfortunately, we are out of time. And I can see by the look on Chris's face, he's not happy about it either. You had a frown showing up for a second there. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you, too, for doing this. I want to make sure our audience knows, if you weren't here in the beginning, This has grown from a little thing in our kitchen to 355 people showing up to hang out with these two gentlemen and Kitty and I and have a wonderful conversation. It has been an amazing event. If you want to sign up, go to capsule.us for a future one to get the invite. They're rather exclusive for the fact that, we get them out once in a while, but not to enough people. And a couple of we've got a really interesting one. If it comes together, hopefully it comes together tomorrow. We'll have our December one on the 15th. And then in January, we're going to actually be in person, if it all works out, with a gentleman who's been on before, Mr. Joe Pine, and a professor from Columbia called Frank Rose. It's about immersive experiences, and it'll be in the offices of RSP, our new home. And it's going to be absolutely amazing in person. And hopefully Houston can show up and hang out with us, perhaps. I always love it when past guests come out and hang out. Because they're like, damn, this is cool enough to hang out and be on the show. And then, people that love to continually learn. James Damien pointing that out by showing up for us a number of times. He's such a good dude. Anyway, Chris, Houston, Kitty, thank you. This has been wonderful. Oh.
If I can say one thing. So let's close it. Since Houston and Chris, since you can't see the chat, James's comment earlier is a perfect way to sign off today. And you two should hear what he said. I love this conversation. We all must lead with our humanity in order to do good and do well. Houston and Chris are beautiful examples of leading through good intent by celebrating our human dignity for all. Thank you both for everything that you're doing, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Peace.
Good to see you. Thank you.